to the World of Dreams podcast. I'm your host, Chelsey Turpening Coxsey. Tonight, we're going to have a very interesting conversation on metaconsciousness and identity. Kind of imagine the Marvelverse, but more like Loki or the Spider-Verse, where it is your own personal identity kind of going through larger lanes. So, here I'll begin my lecture. There's a way to experience yourself beyond a singular, linear identity. Not as everything. Not as something vague or dissolved, or mystical boundless in a way that loses all traction with the actual life you're living. As an expansion of how you understand what yourself actually is and how much of it remains unexplored. What becomes available here is the experience of yourself as a networked consciousness. One core awareness expressed through many layers, timelines, and possibilities, all connected, all informing each other, whether you've been noticing that relationship or not. You're still you, precisely, specifically, and incredibly you, but you're also becoming someone who can sense the pattern that holds across all your moments, not just the one currently in focus. That's metaconsciousness. Not just a concept, but a shift in perspective. You can actually practice that skill step by step. I've got a free course on that exact skill on my YouTube channel called The Master of Perspective. Once you felt it, the old single thread understanding of yourself starts to feel like this looking at a landscape through a keyhole. And I want to be exact about the term I use a lot because it gets borrowed constantly. Quantum thinking. So I'm going to show you how I use it. Quantum thinking is not a claim about physics. It's a cognitive framework. The trained capacity to hold multiple possibilities simultaneously without collapsing prematurely into a single outcome. To stay in a genuine, not yet knowing long enough for something more complete than the first available answer to surface. A quantum physicist holds multiple states of a system in consideration until observation resolves them. A quantum thinker does something analogs internally, holding multiple versions, multiple timelines, and multiple expressions of identity and awareness at once, and letting a deeper intelligence sense which threads are actually most coherent and most worth developing. This isn't chaos, it's not fragmentation, it's organized multiplicity, identity becoming flexible and responsive instead of locked into one narrow track. So, the fun version you're already seeing. If any of this sounds familiar, it's probably because you've watched it in a movie theater already. And here's the funny thing. I look back at how these movies actually end, and it turns out they're making almost exactly the same point this chapter is. In the movie Everything, Everywhere, All at Once, the villain, Jobu Tupaki, is a version of the main character's own daughter who experienced literally every universe at once. Every possibility, all simultaneously. And it doesn't make her powerful or enlightened. It destroys her ability to believe anything matters. She builds a black hole shaped as an everything bagel, every version of everything folded into one. And because everything is possible and everything is happening, nothing feels like it has meaning anymore. That's the actual danger of unlimited multiplicity without a center. Nihilism, not wisdom. The mother, Evelyn, almost goes down the exact same hole. And what pulls her back isn't more power, more universe, or more access. It's the opposite. Choosing this life, this daughter, this unremarkable version of things right in front of her, on purpose, out of everything else available. Connection over expansion. Exactly the thing I just told you. This work should expand you, not dissolve you. Let's look into Doctor Strange for another fun example. Gets a little lighter version of the same idea. Wong and Strange holding 1,000 outcomes in mind and once before choosing one. That's genuinely fun, and it's real, the actual cognitive skill this whole chapter is teaching. But notice what both stories needed to get to get you to actually watch them. Darkness, stakes, someone almost losing themselves. Nobody's buying a ticket to watch someone calmly hold multiple timelines in a loving coherence for 2 hours. I get it, limited audience. So, the storytellers wrapped the real insight in nihilism and villain arc, and the family near collapse because that's what gets people to pay attention, apparently. You don't need any of that. You get to skip straight to the part that actually matters: the coherence, the connection, and the choosing, without needing a crisis to even earn it first. So, let's shape it out a little bit. And the less mysterious this sounds because it's built from the same tools you already have. None of this is consciously forced. And honestly, thank God, because you have enough on your plate already. It's subconsciously revealed through a coherence between what you incubate and the answer that arrives on its own timing. It's teamwork and genuinely between your conscious mind and your subconscious mind at first. Neither one directing the other. The conscious mind plans a question with real clarity. The subconscious does what it does in its own language and its own schedule, showing up whenever it feels like showing up, and its own like coworker, but brilliant, but not rushed. Neither part is in charge. That's what makes it work. But I actually want to push this bigger than to just two inner parts cooperating, because that's still thinking small. The picture, the Spider Society, the Metaverse, if you've seen those little cartoon Spider-Man movies, an entire network of spider people, every version from every universe, each one fully their own person, living their own life, and all of them sharing certain deep patterns underneath the differences. They can find each other, recognize each other, actually work together when it matters. That's close to what I'm talking about here. Not just your conscious mind and your subconscious mind shaking hands and having a really great teamwork. The whole web of every version of you, connected by the patterns that run true no matter what the universe you're currently standing in. Different dimension, same idea. Loki. If we're staying with the Marvel corner of this, which did very well, spend 2 seasons watching an entire agency called this TVA, whose whole job was maintaining the sacred timeline, in quotations, pruning off any branch, any variant, or anything deviant from the one approved versions of events. That's the old model, one correct self. Very much sounds like a lot of ego. Everything else treated as a mistake to be erased, and it doesn't hold. The machine enforcing it literally starts falling apart because forcing infinite variation into one narrow lane was never actually sustainable. It was just violence dressed up as order. So by the end of it, Loki does something different. He doesn't fix the machine. He walks away from it entirely and becomes the center himself. He holds every branch, every timeline, and all of it alive at once, growing out of him like this tree roots and all of the old Norse tales of the made literal. He doesn't collapse the multiverse down to the correct version of events. He becomes the thing stable enough to hold all of it without needing to. I think that's the real difference between the old way of relating to your multiplicity and the way I'm actually teaching. The old way pruned. Whatever didn't fit the current story got disowned, forgotten, treated as a mistake. The new way just needs one grounded center, strong enough to hold the tree without needing any part of it to disappear. That's the shift I'm pointing at. Not eliminating your other branches to keep one tidy version of yourself, but becoming grounded enough to hold the entire tree. And look, I've been having fun with the movies, but this exact shape shows up in real clinical work too. Richard Schwartz, as an example, built an entire therapeutic model, internal family systems, on almost this precise premise. You're not one unified voice. You're many parts, each with its own history and its own job, all of them able to coexist under one grounded self that isn't trying to eliminate any of them. Different language, same board, micro, macro. Emotion is what actually closes the loop between them. Think of it almost like a magnet. The feeling you're carrying is the signal, and when it meets its match somewhere in the response that surfaces, you feel it land. Not a logical confirmation, a felt one. What you're feeling often isn't even your own reaction. It's the emotion of the other version arriving in you, distinct from whatever you're feeling a moment ago. However, you actually get there is generally yours to find out. Some people code it with symbolism. One of my favorites is imagining you're just calling that other version, texting her. Maybe it sounds a little silly on purpose because making that connection feels ordinary as your contacts app make it accessible instead of mystical. Symbolic coding. You do not need a seance. You need a reception. Some people lean closer to remote viewing, stepping into a scene, um, and seeing what's actually there. Some people just let their main systems meet, however that wants to take shape. It's not no image prescribed, no ceiling required. The roof itself won't stay fixed either way. It shifts into whatever the moment actually needs. And symbolism in all of this is just the front door, not a claim about what's happening underneath. Something is genuinely literal, sometimes it's dressed in metaphor. I'm not going to define which one you're actually having. Usually it's something felt and recognized before you've had a chance to even reason it with it. So, a pattern I can't stop noticing. Here's something I keep bumping into, and I want to hold it exactly as carefully as it deserves, which is to say, with real enthusiasm and zero claim to having proven anything. Neural pathways strengthen through repetition, the same way a forest path gets worn the more it's walked. Fungal networks connect entire forest undergrounds, redistributing resources, responding to disruption in one spot with an adaptive response across the whole. No central controller, no forest CEO holding a meeting about it, just distributed intelligence quietly running the show. I notice this same shape in how identity itself seems to organize. Many nodes, none of them a single boss, and coherence without informity. I'm not going to tell you that it's proven fact, repeating at every scale of existence. I don't know that. I just find it generally almost annoyingly hard to not notice. And here's the octopus, my favorite metaphor for all of this, because the nature already built the metaphor for us and didn't even charge a licensing fee. An octopus runs most of its intelligence out of its arms, not centralized in one brain. Each arm tasting, sensing, even solving its own small problems semi independently, and somehow the whole thing still walks around as one coherent, mildly judgmental animal. That's not a cute fact. That's a whole working blueprint. I think about parts of you this practice surfaces the exact same way with the IFS, autonomous enough to hold their own data, their own history, their own versions of events, coherent enough that it's still entirely, unmistakably you holding the whole arrangement together. Zoom out of the scale, out of your identity here, and not just a mood, not a memory. The whole architecture of who you are across every version this practice has shown you. And the pattern doesn't really change. Same shape, just bigger arms. I take this seriously, actually, not only as a metaphor to play with, but I have felt what it was like when the network reaches all the way out to something ancestral, something written into you before it existed, or just something generally really out there. And while I'm already out on this particular limb, an octopus joke, I regret nothing, by the way, here's one more thing worth naming honestly, since it lives in the same territory. I have had clients and have experienced this myself describe dreams that feel less like dreaming and more like generally being somewhere else, a different version of a life fully lived for a while. May it be a past, present, or maybe even future. Sometimes something entirely foreign out of this reality completely. Then a real snap back to this one on awaking. And I think that's pretty far out there, even by standards of everything else in this talk. I'm not really here to tell you there's proof of anything, but I've heard it described the same way enough by many people to think it is interesting to look at. Some people actually track these, maybe at the same time incubating it. So here's the actual caution I give, though, and it matters more than whatever the phenomenon turns out to be. Don't let this become a rabbit hole you disappear into. If chasing that feeling starts pulling you away from wholeness of your own actual life that you're standing in, that's a signal to come back and not go deeper. This entire practice only works if it expands the life you're living. The moment it starts replacing it, something's gone wrong, regardless of how real the experience felt. I say this often, and I mean it every time. Dreams don't define consciousness. They just get to show us how it works. What you decide from that means that's your parts. Now, grounding in the center. This ground expands you. It does not dissolve you. This distinction matters enormously. And I don't want to skip past that part. You are not everything, and this isn't an invitation to drift into some boundaryless experience that loses its grip on a specific embodied life you're actually living. You're not lost in the system. You're centered within it. Your specific point of awareness of the whole network or organizes around. Self-love is literally what stabilizes this, not as an idea, as a lived daily practice. That sense of I am here, I am aware, and I am choosing. The goodness isn't limitation on how far this can take you. It's a condition that makes the expansion safe. It's what lets you go as far as the system can carry you and come back integrated instead of scattered. You can explore the full scale of the networked consciousness contains without losing the core of who you are. Because even in the most expanded state this practice can produce, you're still at the point of awareness experiencing it. And that point is irreplaceable. So, in my closing, you don't need to define this perfectly. You don't need to prove it or make it legitimate to anyone who hasn't felt it from the inside. You are the network. You are the node. You are the weaver and the thread, the moment of awareness in which the whole system recognizes itself.